This morning's flight was about practice, and more practice of circuits. I'm trying to consolidate previous learning so that I can be more fluid and responsive in my control inputs. And for the first time, I'll be doing all radio calls. My last flight was 2 weeks ago, as last week the weather was not good enough. I wonder if this break would affect my performance. Greg was back and he would help me out today. The weather looks good for both the morning and the afternoon sessions, so with a bit of luck I'll get 2 hours of circuits training done today. The weather at the time of the first flight was as good as it gets at Camden.
Runway 06, wind variable 5 knots, occasional tailwind 3 knots, visibility greater than 10 kilometres, clouds scattered 1,500, broken 3,000, temperature 20, QNH 1020. On first contact with Camden ground or tower, notify receipt of Charlie.
The tailwind would give me an opportunity to experience this condition in the final approach for the first time today. Visibility was reported to be over 10 k's, however I couldn't see the distant mountain peaks that I normally use for heading reference, so I had to use local landmarks. In this morning's flight I'll need to trim after rotation, level off from crosswind to downwind at 1,300 feet, improve spacing and don't be late with the turns, and improve engine power, settings and timing, and of course be mindful of low airspeeds on finals. I also try to improve the use of attitude to control airspeed and power to control the rate of descent. Don't forget the bumpfish checks, and as I said earlier, I'll be doing all radio calls. I'm not yet thinking ahead of the plane. Even when I know that a configuration change will be needed in the next few seconds, such as doing a turn or reducing speed, I find it challenging to complete the required tasks quickly and accurately enough. I find that a lifetime of habits has an effect here. In non-piloting life, I tend to take my time and think about what I want to do. I look for alternatives, balance cons and pros, select a solution, execute it, evaluate, adjust, and then repeat. When I used to teach entrepreneurship, I would talk about the OODA loop, which is observe, orient, decide, and act. In non-piloting life, I do something similar, but very, very slow. As a pilot, reactions have to be quick. The brain is still a single core computer, but a lot needs to be done. The solution is to do time slicing. In time slicing, the brain switches between tasks very quickly, giving the impression of multitasking. The pilot aviates, scans instruments and environment, and communicates one thing at a time, but very quickly. For me, this is not yet natural. Each of those activities takes too long. When I look at the instruments, I tend to get fixated with them. When I do a radio call, I spend a few seconds thinking what to say and then block my brain waiting for an ATC response. When I do a pre-landing check, I forget about my position in relation to the runway and end up almost outside the control area. The only solution seems to be practice, practice, and practice to break habits that work well outside the cockpit but not inside. You can see the entire flight in the full-length video. Use the timestamps on the YouTube video to jump around. For the first time, I used 2 cameras. One mounted behind us, looking into the cockpit and the windshield, and the second mounted on the left window to provide a better view of the control panel. The back camera is a GoPro Hero 12 model, and although it promises better heat performance compared to older models, it still turned off automatically before the end of the flight due to overheating. The side camera is my older GoPro Hero 10. This worked for the entire flight thanks to the 4 heat sinks that I attached. How rusty was I after the week-long break? I noticed 2 things. I needed Greg's prompting to start up the plane. The plane had not flown for a few days, so I would have to prime it first. I was worried that I would damage the engine if I made a mistake at startup. Did I set the throttle to exactly 1/4 inch open? How do I know exactly when to set the mix? How do I know exactly when to set the mix to full reach after the engine has started? I also needed some help with the operations of the 2 radios. For example, selecting COM1 versus COM2 and the microphone buttons. I felt good about the rest of the checks, pre-flight, after startup, taxi and run-up. I also felt good about doing the radio calls, even though I made some mistakes.
Camden Tower, Julia Bravo Charlie at holding point 06, ready for circuits.
Holding point Alpha, actually. Don't worry.
Julia Bravo Charlie, tower line up 06.
Line up.
06, Julia Bravo Charlie.
Yeah, line up 06, Julia Bravo Charlie.
Sorry, where do we get
Let's
from?
go.
For example, I refer to holding point alpha as holding point 06, confusing the holding point and runway designations. I also did not repeat the entire instruction I received. Takeoff was exciting as always. At around 500 feet, I glanced back to see the runway and ensure I was still on the center line. Everything accelerated after that. The upwind leg is very short and busy. The pilot has to ensure that the climb is at the correct speed, which is 74 knots. Look out for traffic, check P's and T's, anticipate the turn to crosswind, ensure the heading is correct, and compensate for crosswind. Greg reminded me to use the rudder to keep the turn indicator ball in the center. The first circuit was overwhelming. I missed leveling at circuit altitude and Greg corrected it. Greg also did the radio call as I was offline at that point. But I managed to do most of the bumpfish pre-landing checks correctly. I was too high on the final, and as a result landing was not possible, so we went around. Circuit 2 was better. It seems that in all of my circuit sessions so far, the first circuit sets the stage. In the first circuit, I demonstrate all of my skill deficits and use up the rest of the circuits to try and fix as many as I can. The second circuit was better and managed a decent touch and go. I even got a couple of excellent remarks from Greg, which is great. I think I made some progress. I'm becoming more confident with the radio calls, especially in the circuit. I see improvement across all operations. However, I am still inconsistent. Although I understand what I'm doing or should be doing at a theory level, my execution is slow and often too late. In the Flight Radar 24 video, you can see that a couple of circuits were too wide, especially in the crosswind and base legs. The only reason for this was my slow reaction, as the wind was relatively calm and couldn't really have an effect in where I turned and how the plane behaved. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel right now. Just click on this subscribe button below this video. And of course, you can also head over to my detailed flight training log pages on the Tech Explorations website. In these pages, I document in detail all of my experiences and learnings from each one of my training flights. These logs contain a goldmine of information for any aviation student or anyone interested in aviation. Until next time, I wish you clear skies and safe landings.